You're listening to Two Girls, One Crossword.
Well, I'm in kind of a silly, goofy mood today because there is supposedly, or potentially, a rumor going around about me at the office that I fell into a bush at a party 2 years ago. And I would just like the record to show that I did not fall into a bush. I was sitting in a chair and the chair broke through no fault of my own. I was next to a bush, but I feel like the way that was phrased could give people the wrong idea. And
It's true.
Again, this is only potential rumor because one person said it, and it could have been about another Grace. But in case anyone is on our all office emails, the chair broke, and it was a plastic chair, and it was embarrassing, and I didn't do anything to make it break. I was just sitting, minding my own business.
It was not her fault that the chair broke. It was this person who started the rumor's fault that the chair broke, okay? And second of all, who starts rumors on their last day at work? Am I right?
Do you think it was a trap, and the chair was broken, and they were just waiting for someone at the party to sit in it?
I think so, probably. Knowing some of these people we work with. Just kidding, sort of.
Well, anyways, I just want to tell that to our listeners, to clear the air and to have it, on record as to what really happened that night.
Tell us the truth, Grace. Did you fall into a bush? It's okay. You can be honest here.
I was like bush adjacent. I was not in, the imagery that I feel like everyone has about what happened is just not what it was really like. But
it really was painted in a light that was not flattering. But for what end?
Yeah. Okay. Let's just move on and talk about some more serious stuff.
Yeah.
Like our podcast.
Oh, we have a podcast together, in case you guys didn't know. It's called Two Girls, One Crossword. It is some people's favorite weekly Podword Crosscast. And the name of me, one of the hosts of this podcast, is Chelsea Rowan. That is indeed the name of me.
That was really natural. And
thank you.
My name is Grace Topinka, and those are our names, and that's how people address us. Mm-hmm. But there are other people named Grace in the world, and kind of people like that we work with know other people named Grace. So maybe it was another Grace that fell into the bush at work. There's no way of knowing.
There isn't, except writing to this person and asking.
Which I will not do.
We won't do it.
Anyways, this is us.
This is us. This is who we are. We don't like rumors, What a week. I feel like I opened my eyes or what's the saying? You blink and you miss it. I blinked and here I am. It's a Friday and I cannot remember what happened this last week. It's been kind of crazy at work for me. Nothing
it is
anybody
kind
asked.
Of a blur. Well, I have not a corrections corner, but I have an additional corner from, speaking of the week, last week's episode.
Oh.
My topic was on the Alamo. And I talked about last week how in San Antonio, the Capitol building, there are a lot of paintings of the Alamo, very Anglo-centric depictions of it. But when I was looking for pictures to use for our Instagram posts, which, by the way, every week we post pictures on our Instagram that have to do with our topic, so go check that out if you want a visual addition to the episode. But there is a Tejano monument in San Antonio, and it was put up in 2012, I believe, so
nice.
Recently-ish. But it's was made to be a tribute to the contributions of Tejanos and Tejanas who played an influential role in the founding of Texas.
Amazing. Very nice.
Yeah, so you can go to our Instagram if you want to check that out. It's linked below, and it's also at The Good Evening Girls.
Wow. What a plug. I love that.
Seamless, baby.
So seamless. Speaking of seamless, I also have a little minor corrections corner. Well, it's not really minor. It's more of just like an apology apartment. We're going to step into the apology apartment. I apologize to any listener who may or may not have been listening to last week's episode, the first distribution run, where I completely effed up and we put out an episode where my audio track was not there. So it was just Grace hanging by herself, doing her thing. It might have caused you some confusion. You might
have silence and me laughing.
I didn't quite understand it. The way that I found out about it is I thought our opener was quite good. So I went to listen to it again. I had quality checked this before, but I went to listen again, and there was no audio. And I was like, Chelsea, what did you do? And then, of course, like as soon as the light bulb went off, we had some people writing to us, and I thank the listeners for writing to us. And I apologize, for being who I am, which is to say, for being useless, because that's just how it happens. Grace is being nice. Oh,
it was a mistake. Who cares? Everyone understood that was not our actual podcast, but that is how I practice the podcast. I do an entire episode on my own, and I just imagine what Chelsea would say. So I take the appropriate pauses. It's a timing thing for me.
Yeah. Usually she hits the nail on the head with the pauses, but sometimes not.
What if we rehearsed like all of our episodes before, like ran through it? That would be well. Actually, we had to do that. We did that. We have a Sound of Music podcast called Do Re Mi. If you want to learn a million things about the Sound of Music, and we had a couple. I feel like it was one episode we had to record 3 times, and it's like the first time you make jokes, like you're sharing your opinion, and then the third time it's like you try to make the same jokes, but you just can't make it happen naturally again.
I know. That was early podcast days for us. Very early.
Yeah. Go listen and see if you could tell which episode that we had to record.
If you can make through the horrible audio, but
only in the first couple episodes the audio is really bad. But it gets better.
The information is worth it though. Okay. The information is worth it. Speaking of information, Grace, can you provide us some crowdsourced information from Polapalooza?
Oh, yes. How could I almost forget about Polapalooza?
The most important part of the episode.
Not acting like myself.
Who is she?
We asked our Twitter followers, which group number, if any, will get you on the dance floor? And yes, there was a typo, and you can't fix the typos and whatever. I'm glad everyone understood. But the options were Electric Slide, the Wobble, Cupid Shuffle, and the Cha-Cha Slide.
Ooh.
And it was a tie for first place with 40% each, Electric Slide and the Cha-Cha Slide.
Okay.
And then the tie for third and fourth place, I don't know how this works, whatever, with 10% each also, the Wobble and Cupid Shuffle.
Okay.
So we're symmetrical, if anything.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could do the Cupid Shuffle from memory. I think I'd have to be like in a group.
Cupid Shuffle.
I'd have to be in a group, it is what I said. I'd have to be in a group of people and watch them and then like pick it up.
You could pick it up.
I'm sure I could. I just can't remember what it is. I think I would pick Electric Slide.
I like the Electric Slide, but I also like the Cha-Cha Slide because it has more variation in the moves.
Is really good too. Actually, maybe Cha-Cha Slide, because I think... Did you have those days in gym class? There were dance days where they taught you like dances to know for like being at a party?
No. I never had that.
We had those, and we learned like the Electric Slide, Cha-Cha Slide, and like whatever other dance numbers you're supposed to know, like in a like for group dances at like weddings. And
wait, was this like elementary school or middle school? Oh, okay,
both.
I feel like you just have to learn that through like life experience.
This was a life experience. Yeah. If anybody else went to a school where you had dance week in gym class, let me know. It was actually one of my favorite things because you didn't have to like play hockey against the boys that sweat too much and like screamed at you.
I don't know what I would prefer, like if having to dance in front of people or having to do athletics. Either way, like I'm not good at either of those, so they're both traumatizing to me.
Yeah. But you know what's not traumatizing?
What, Chell?
Ooh, hits and shits.
They can be sometimes.
Sometimes. Today, I mean, not for me today, but just a little warning. I had literally one of the craziest work weeks in a very long time. So I did as many crosswords as I could, but admittedly, my hits and shits are a little shorter than they usually are. I hope you can forgive me out there. Sometimes the week just gets away with me. You know how it is.
I'm sure that's fine. You're allowed to have that, but also we talked plenty at the top, so.
Okay, true. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. I'll start us off with the Tuesday New York Times crossword on June 22nd by Matt Frederick. Speaking of last week, shout out to you, 35 across, piece of limbo equipment.
Ooh.
Bar. Limbo was Chelsea's topic last week.
It's true.
But some other clues I liked from that puzzle were offerings from Pottery Barn and Chipotle, bowls.
That was good.
13 down, many a TikTok user. teen. Okay, but some of us are adults.
It's true.
And I also liked I thought the theme was cute. I don't know if it's been done before because it seems like, too easy. But basically in the crossword, there were circled squares and they intersected right in the middle. They made an X. And anyways, it ended up being like highway to hell crossed with stairway to heaven.
This was really cute, and it looked cute too in the grid.
Yeah. And then crossroads. It was like a lot of the puzzle was involved in this, but I enjoyed that. I thought that was cute.
Very good. I liked the Friday New York Times June 18th puzzle by Daniel Larson. I love puzzles that have a lot of 15-letter across answers, especially when the fill ends up being something surprising or interesting. And this puzzle in particular had a stack of 3 15 acrosses at the top and a stack at the bottom. So that's 6. And then right through the middle, there was a 7th one. Really nice. And I think there was one directly going down as well. So just a lot of full 15ers. And I love that. And some good fill. So 17 across, Grace, this is for you. Show whose logo replaces an O with a diamond ring.
Wait,
The Bachelorette.
Oh, yeah, I probably would have gotten that.
15 letters. Nice. Or 32 across, high risk game. The answer was Russian roulette.
Ooh.
And then 57 across, certain summer attire, sleeveless dress. So just nice fill. I love seeing them all the way across. That was a good puzzle.
I liked the Thursday New York Times puzzle by Danny Lawson. 60 across, one making a scene, stagehand. Oh, wait, this one was a rebus.
There was a rebus. It was a Charlie Brown theme, I think.
Yeah. You blockhead.
Yes.
Blockhead was the rebus.
Head being the word that was in the last square of our themed answer.
I took notes on that, but I didn't. I also liked the Washington Post Sunday. Were you able to do that one?
No. I can't remember if I did or not.
Let's see, what day was Sunday this week? The 20th. Evan Bernholz, of course. 31 across, made performative gestures. I thought this was going to be like performative activism, but it was mimed.
Oh, nice. Saturday New York Times, June 19th, Sophia Mahmoods. Loved this puzzle. I knew it was going to be a good one. One across, the opener. Take pregame shots, ? Trash talk.
Oh,
very
smart.
Nice. 15 across, person who will do anything for you in modern slang. Do you know this one?
Ride or die.
Ride or die, baby. And then I thought Grace would like this one. One down, magician's favorite cereal, ?
Tricks.
Very good.
Nice.
And then I learned something, and I wanted to know if this was something that people actually say, because I've never heard of it. 54 across, Smirnoff Ice, for example. The answer was Alcopop.
Oh.
Like alcohol soda, I'm assuming is what that is kind of meaning.
Oh, or not. I guess it wouldn't be popsicle.
Right. I've never heard Alcopop before, ever.
Me neither.
Although sometimes I do say that Miller High Life is basically a soda, which is not alcoholism, I promise. But would you call that an Alcopop then? Is that like what it's supposed to be? Like it's easy to drink, it's basically a soda? Like, I mean, maybe because it's like low alcohol content?
Is that what the cool kids are calling it? I've never heard it called that. But again, I feel like I'm not around Smirnoff Ices a lot. No, and also I don't think you're not someone who drinks a lot either. So I don't think you would be like talking Alcopop slang with, your local. I'm not. I actually don't need alcohol to have fun. Oh, that's lucky. I just need ecstasy. And then I'm good.
Yes, ecstasy. Yeah. And and other illegal activities. No, we're kidding.
All I need is a bottle of ice cold water.
Literally, there needs to be ice in it.
Yeah, I know that's like a very American thing, and for this one moment, I am proud to be an American. I like my water ice cold. I don't care if it's not good for you.
Proud to be an American. Oh God! Speaking of America, I got nothing for that one. But the Sunday New York Times, June 20th, Michael Lieberman. Favorite clue and answer of the week goes to 65 across. This made me laugh out loud. And I can't tell if it was because I was just feeling delirious by the time I got to this answer, but I thought it was really well written. One, seeing things with a critical eye, question mark. And the answer was Cyclops. I was like, yeah, because it has a critical eye. This is so good. And then this one I thought Grace would like from that same puzzle, 71 across. Wizard of Blank, nickname for a good massage therapist.
Oh.
And the answer was Wizard of Oz, AHS. Which
nice.
AHS is nobody's favorite crossword to use or fill, you know. Sometimes you just need to have those kinds of combinations in your puzzles. So if you gotta do it, give us something fun to clue it as.
Have fun with it.
Yeah. That made solving that answer worth it.
Is that a saying, or do you think Michael made that up?
Michael?
Oh,
Michael. Oh, Michael. Oh, Michael. Don't get me started. I will do the whole Godfather scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in cinema history. Also from that puzzle, 70 down, like fuchsia and turquoise, but here's the key. Fuchsia spelled Fuschia, and turquoise spelled Turquoise. Misspelled was the answer, because they were misspelled in the clue. But I think those are commonly misspelled words, and so it's supposed to trip you up, and it did trip me up because I don't know how to spell either of those words. Apparently, the correct way to spell fuchsia is Fushsia.
Okay.
Not
I don't know how I would spell it.
Fuchsia. And then turquoise is Turquoise.
If someone was like, you have to spell this word for your life with no autocorrect, I would be nervous.
You'd probably have to make peace with your imminent death, unfortunately.
It is what it is.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do well in the spelling bees. I really like reading, but my spelling is poor. It's extremely poor. Ask anybody. Ask anyone.
That's one of our biggest handicaps in the crossword.
I think so.
Is our spelling.
And my handwriting whenever we're doing it in person, in the flesh.
Well, you go loosey-goosey between, like, uppercase, lowercase, and you're writing all types of weird stuff in weird ways that I just can't get behind.
She can't get behind because she hates me. Anyway, that's all I got for my hits, my shits. Just
that's
a light hit.
I guess I didn't have a lot of hits and shits this week either.
It's a light week for us, but that's okay because we had a lot of chit-chat here. We energized each other, and I think now we're going to chug, choo-choo on right into our topics, I think.
Let's do it, baby. Flip the coin.
All right.
I'm ready. Born ready.
She's ready. We're going to flip the coin right now. Heads. Oh my god. Oh my god. I guess I
gotta...
Are you ready? I guess I gotta be. Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
My topic comes from the Monday, June 21st, New York Times by Jacob Stolberg. 36 down. Pioneering journalist Nellie.
The answer is a potential topic.
Was it?
Yes, but I didn't choose it.
Okay. The answer was Bly, spelled B-L-Y, Nellie Bly. Was it a potential topic for you because you know who Nellie Bly is, or because you didn't know who Nellie Bly was?
Because I didn't.
Ooh, okay. I'm very excited to teach you about Nellie Bly. Nellie Bly was born Elizabeth Cochrane on May 5th, 1864. And as the clue suggests, she was a pioneering American journalist. She was born in a place now known as Cochrane's Mill in Pittsburgh, and the town is actually named after her father, who, did business stuff there. So they named the town after him. He must have had a mill, something. I actually did read what he did, but I decided it wasn't important to Nellie's story, so I deleted it from my research. So,
and your memory.
And my memory. It's gone. It does not hold a memory slot any longer.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Nellie, she lived in this place in Pittsburgh. She did not have much education growing up, But when she was a young woman, she read an article in the Pittsburgh Dispatch that argued that a woman's place was in the home to, quote, be a helpmate to men, end quote. Ha ha ha. Oh, and so Nellie, well, I should say Elizabeth at this time, strongly disagreed with this sentiment, and she wrote an angry response to the editor under the name Lonely Orphan Girl. And the editor of the paper, a man named George Madden, was so impressed by her that he offered her a chance to write a column for the newspaper called Lonely Orphan Girl.
Oh. Wait,
very
how old
nice.
is she at this point?
This point, by the time she started writing the column, she was like 21.
Okay.
Her first article was called The Puzzle Girl, and it was about how divorce affected women, and she argued for reform on divorce laws. So good for her. And it was at the Pittsburgh Dispatch that Elizabeth came up with her now famous pen name, Nellie Bly. She chose it from a popular song by a man named Stephen Foster called Nellie Bly. But here's the thing. Nellie Bly, the song, is spelled Nelly, Bly. And Nellie Bly, the, journalist, is spelled Nellie. Okay? So while working at the Dispatch, Bly wrote about the working conditions of young women in Pittsburgh. She wrote about slum life. And it was rare during these times for women specifically to be writing about these topics. Women's contributions to newspapers were usually restricted to, quote, women's pages, which, talked about marriage, children, and the home. So it was really cool that she, at such a young age, was writing about, things other than getting married. In 1886, she went down to Mexico, and for a couple months, she traveled throughout Mexico, and she reported on governmental corruption and the condition of the poor. Mexican governmental officials did not like this, however. They thought she was, negatively depicting the country, and so they expelled her from the country. But you can still read these articles that she wrote, and they are known as 6 Months in Mexico, and they were published in 1888. But then Nellie was like, okay, I'm done with Pittsburgh. I'm over this city. I'm done with Mexico. So in 1887, she left Pittsburgh for New York City, where she went to work for a little man named Mr. Joseph Pulitzer.
Oh, I think I know him.
Me too. So Joseph Pulitzer founded the newspaper called The New York World. That might not be what you know him as. You hear about these Pulitzer Prizes. Yes, they are in fact named after Joseph Pulitzer. He established, he gave an endowment to Columbia University in 1917. And, a couple of years later, they, dedicated these awards to him. But one of his most famous contributions to journalism is founding the New York World. He had, a huge rivalry with William Randolph Hearst, the whole deal. Read up on your newspaper history. He's a big player. Anyway, so Nellie leaves Pittsburgh. She goes to New York City, she meets Mr. Pulitzer, and she gets herself a job. One of her very first undertakings while working at the World was feigning insanity and getting herself committed to an insane asylum on Blackwell's Island, now known as Roosevelt Island.
Cool, very interesting.
Right. And that's actually what I know Nellie Bly from. In high school, I went on a field trip to Washington, D.C., and there was a museum there at the time called the Newsam. Essentially, it was a museum about news. It was one of the...
still there.
It actually closed down in 2019.
Sad.
And I think they announced in March of this year that they're looking to relocate if they can get funding. It was one of the coolest museums I have ever been to.
That's what I've heard about it.
It's amazing. They had the largest Berlin Wall exhibit outside of, or in the United States, which is really cool. When I was there, they had an exhibit dedicated to the Unabomber, and they actually had the Unabomber's hut in the museum, where he, hung out. They also had the actual car that the DC snipers used during the DC sniper situation. But the coolest and most touching and just insane exhibit that they had was the room dedicated to 9/11. They had a piece from one of the World Trade Centers hanging from the ceiling in this huge room with just really bright, and around all of the walls were newspapers, the front page newspapers of the day after the 9/11 attacks from all over the world in every single language. And it was just really overwhelming to see that. But not only did they have all of these amazing things, they also had a film dedicated to Nellie Bly going to this insane asylum and like what she did and her contributions to journalism. So a lot of the information that I'm going to be telling you about this little thing that she did comes from an article on PBS.org by Dr. Howard Markle. It was titled, How Nellie Bly Went Undercover to Expose the Abuse of the Mentally Ill, end quote. That's the name of the article. I also got some information from biography.com. There's an article on there called Inside Nellie Bly's 10 Days in the Madhouse. Very good articles, both of them. But Marco from PBS said that Nellie, you know, at the New York World started talking herself up to the editors, and the editors became like really impressed by her. And so they offered her this awesome assignment. Okay. And according to Nellie, quote, I was asked by the World if I could have myself committed to one of the asylums for the insane in New York with a view to writing a plain and unvarnished narrative of the treatment of the patients therein, end quote. So she was down. But apparently, getting committed to this hospital was not difficult. That was the easy part.
Okay, I was going to say, how did she pull that off? But
I'll tell you. But here's the thing. Getting in was not hard. They did not, herself or her employers, her editors, nobody had a plan of getting her out. Okay, because it can actually be quite difficult, especially during then, to get somebody out of an insane asylum, especially if they're sent there by like a judge, right? Anyway, okay, so how does she get in? First, she took a room at a cheap boarding house. The boarding house was called Temporary Home for Females. She used an assumed name, she called herself Bly Brown. She then began imitating and like watching women in the house that she thought were, quote, in her own words, crazy. And so she started imitating them. She would stay up all night. She would talk to herself. She wouldn't make eye contact. She just would wander the halls, wander the streets, shouting, all types of things. And eventually, the matron of the boarding house was like, I've had enough. She called the cops. The cops came up, and they arrested her. They took her to Essex Market Police Courtroom, where a judge pronounced her insane and ordered her to the insanity ward at Bellevue Hospital. Like, immediately.
Wow. And
that's it.
That was fast.
Right? So a few days later, she was on a ferry to Blackwell's Island to a, quote, insane place where you'll never get out of, end quote, which is what the ambulance driver told her.
Why is the ambulance driver telling that to the patients?
Who is this ambulance driver? It's like Shutter frickin' Island, right? You know, you got like a creepy ambulance driver. This is an insane place and you'll never get out of here. Yeah, I haven't gotten out of this ambulance seat for 20 years. That was the driver.
That is a really good depiction of that one scene from Shutter Island, yes.
Thank you for your continued support, Grace. I always know that you will hype me up. Okay. So she heads to the island. And then Bly ended up documenting her experience in a book called 10 Days in a Madhouse, which still to this day remains a classic among psychiatry, and it's a warning against inhumane treatment of the mentally ill. So Bellevue Hospital, where she was sent, was located on Blackwell's Island, now called Roosevelt Island, and it was meant to be a state-of-the-art institution committed to moral and humane rehabilitation of its patients. But then, as things always do, funding got cut and everything went downhill. Originally, the hospital was built to hold no more than 1,000 patients, but by the time Bly was sent there were 1,600 patients with only 16 doctors assigned to care for them.
Oh my God.
And of the doctors, Bly said, quote, excepting 2, I have never seen them pay any attention to the patients, end quote. She also questioned, rightfully so, whether a judge was able to pronounce a woman insane by, quote, merely bidding her good morning and refusing to hear her pleas of release. Even the sick ones know it's useless to say anything, for the answer will be that it is in their imagination, end quote.
Yeah, seriously.
Who gave the judge the right? Where was the doctor?
Like, actually evaluated by a psychiatrist.
Yeah. So she gets to the hospital, and she quickly befriends her fellow inmates, and it was quickly revealed to her that there was rampant psychological and physical abuse going on inside of the hospital. Patients were forced to take ice-cold baths and remain in wet clothes for hours, leading to frequent illness. They were forced to sit still on benches without speaking or moving for stints lasting 12 or more hours. Some patients were tethered together with ropes and forced to pull carts like mules.
Oh my God, that's sick.
It's horrible. Food and sanitary conditions were horrible. There was rotten meat, moldy stale bread, and frequently contaminated water. Those who complained or resisted were beaten. Bly even talked about the threat of sexual violence by vicious staffers, orderlies who would actually choke, harass, and beat patients. And I also read somewhere that some of the orderlies were actually inmates from a prison on the same island. They would like bring prisoners over just to help wrangle the inmates at this hospital.
This island has a lot of issues, prisons and insane asylums.
Yeah. Also on this island, I think there was like sick houses for like tuberculosis, like all kinds of things, like whatever. Bly, this one killed me. Like, obviously all of this is devastating, but this one is particularly heart-wrenching. Bly also reported on cultural insensitivity and language barriers experienced by immigrant women who spoke little to no English. Many of the inmates were not insane at all. They were recent immigrants, mostly women, caught up in law enforcement systems in which they were not able to communicate. So instead of finding someone to like translate for them, they just sent them to Bellevue Hospital, where they would then die.
Yeah, I was going to say, how could you even determine if someone needed to go to an insane asylum if you can't even understand them?
Right. So then, yeah, other people that Bly met at the hospital were actually just committed there simply for being poor because they had no family or anyone to support them. And they basically just fell through the cracks of the system and ended up here. And yeah, Bly quickly realized that a lot of these patients or these inmates had not actually been suffering before they came to the hospital. But now that they were there, they had severe psychological trauma.
Wow. That's not surprising, though.
So here are some quotes from her book. First quote. "The insane asylum on Blackwell's Island is a human rat trap. It is easy to get in, but once there, it is impossible to get out." And here's a quote documenting some of the torture she experienced while she was there. Quote, "My teeth chattered and my limbs were goose-fleshed and blue with cold. Suddenly I got, one after the other, 3 buckets of water over my head, ice-cold water too, into my eyes, my ears, my nose, and my mouth. I think I experienced the sensation of a drowning person as they dragged me, gasping, shivering and quaking from the tub. For once, I did look insane." End quote. And then she writes of forced isolation. Quote, "What accepting torture would produce insanity quicker than this treatment? Take a perfectly sane and healthy woman, shut her up and make her sit from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on straight back benches. Do not allow her to talk or move during these hours. Give her no reading and let her know nothing of the world or its doings. Give her bad food and harsh treatment, and see how long it will take to make her insane. 2 months would make her a mental and physical wreck." End quote.
I need to know how she got out. Because if the place knew that she was a reporter, I feel like they would try and, not let her get out.
Right. Or they would do something to change their treatment of her, right?
Yeah.
So, after 2 days on the island, her treatment was so bad that she dropped her crazy act. And she started presenting sane and begging them, I'm not ill, whatever. But nothing changed. They continued to just hold her there, prisoner. The people there, have no way of getting out. It's not like they can check themselves out of this hospital, right? And so what the New York World ended up having to do is they had to hire an attorney to go there and, basically sign her out. I am her guardian, and I can take her out. So she spent a total of 10 days on the island. That's it. But she said
she experienced all of that in only 10 days.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And 2 days after her release, the New York World ran the first installment of her story. It was called Behind Asylum Bars. It was a huge success immediately. It took the world by storm. The people who wrongly diagnosed her and tortured her while she was there immediately were like, oh, we're so sorry. Like, we're not like bad people, right? And it's like, oh, interesting. Okay. And the expose itself was proved so embarrassing to the city that they appropriated an extra $1 million per year, which is $24 million in today's money, to correct many of the abuses that Bly exposed while she was there. Mm-hmm. There was a grand jury investigation that uncovered more abuses, and approximately 1 month after her expose was published, many of the most glaring issues had improved. There's better living and sanitary conditions, more nourishing meals. There were translators for the foreign-born patients there. And many, if not all, of the abusive nurses and physicians were fired and replaced. And because of this expose, she became a household name and one of the most famous journalists in the world. Mm-hmm. Which leads me to 2 years later. After her stay at Bellevue, Bly made headlines again when she announced that she was planning to recreate the trip described in Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days. But here's the thing. She was going to circumnavigate the globe by herself. That's one. And 2, she was going to beat Jules Verne's record. Okay. Here's a quote from Nellie. Quote, "Impossible was the terrible verdict. In the first place, you are a woman and would need a protector. And even if it were possible for you to travel alone, you would need to carry so much baggage that it would detain you on making rapid changes. Only a man could do it," they huffed. "Very well," I said angrily. "Start the man, and I'll start the same day for some other newspaper and beat him." End quote.
All right.
Hell to the
Go Nelly.
yeah. Go Nelly. Not only did she want to beat the record of Around the World in 80 Days, but she also wanted to prove that women were capable of traveling just as well, if not better, than men. And that women could travel alone. And so, Nellie Bly set out on November 14th, 1889. She traveled light, only taking, what?
Sorry, 1989.
1889.
1889? Oh.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This was a long time ago.
This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
So she went to the Bellevue Hospital 2 years prior to this.
Okay,
like
I get
1887.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, shout out November 14th, 1889. She traveled light, only taking the dress she was wearing, a cape, and a small travel bag. Sounds exactly like what you take when you go traveling alone.
I wish I had a cape, but yes, I do put everything into a backpack because planes charge you for carry-on now. You got to slip it under the seat in front of you. Mm-hmm. I can travel very light if needed.
Exactly. And imagine having to do all of this in a dress as well. So this is like 1889. She's got a dress. Like, you got to wear a full dress from now on traveling.
Yeah, and she doesn't have like a nice North Face or JanSport backpack. You know, she probably has like a hat box or something that she
doesn't have
around.
Sneakers, okay? Like, I can't imagine like the support she has in her shoes. Probably not that good. So she began by setting out across the Atlantic and then ferried across the English Channel. In France, she actually got to meet Jules Verne, who apparently was very charmed by her. She then rode a train down to Italy. A ship took her through the Suez Canal. Whenever she could, she would cable or telegraph her progress back to the New York World. The World was even running a contest asking readers to guess the exact time she would return, and there was like nearly 1 million entries. So this is like a huge like publicity thing. It was huge. There's a great article that I read on the New Yorker, and it goes in depth about Nellie's journalism specifically and like what she did for journalism. But it also talked about her trip around the world. It's called Nellie Bly's Lessons in Writing What You Want To by Alice Gregory. Gregory writes of what Nellie would send back to the New York World from her travels. Quote, "The many dispatches that followed, filed by telegram from all over the world, were filled with delightful descriptions. Quote, dazed-looking, wan-faced people on a transatlantic steamship. Roads, quote, as smooth as a ballroom floor, end quote. rubies and Ceylon, quote, like pure drops of blood, end quote. The cross-continental reportage highlights Bly's thick-skinned reactions to what most modern women would consider patronizing chivalry, her odd, almost sinister fixation on female beauty. She writes of women as though she wants to eat them. Her shameless self-promotion. Was she a lesbian? Who knows?
I was gonna say, sounds pretty fruity to me.
What's the tick time sound?
But yeah. I saw gay, so I said gay.
It's like, yeah, sounds pretty fruity to me. Continuing with that quote. Bly could be hilariously jaded, complaining that in Aden she found, quote, nothing extraordinary about a camel market. Quote, nearby was a goat market, but business seemed dull in both places, she wrote. In Singapore, Bly met an orangutan, quote, while he seemed to be very clever, he had a way of gazing off in the distance with wide, unseeing eyes, meanwhile pulling his long red hair up over his head in an aimless, insane way that was very fetching, end quote. But, as most people from this time, she also had her moments, right? Where she could just be plain racist or cruel.
There it is.
You know? To those she met along the way. Here's some more quotes from that New Yorker article. Just days after experiencing, quote, lively tussle with the disease of the wave, so seasickness, Bly admits that, quote, as heartless as I thought it was, I could not sympathize with a seasick man. Quote, Asian beggars, she observed, are so repulsive that instead of appealing to one's sympathy, they only succeed in arousing one's disgust, end quote. At different times, Bly said that Somalians are like bullfrogs and like cows. A Sri Lankan, she noted, has legs like, quote, smoked herrings. They were so black, flat, and dried looking. She compared Mexican men to hungry but well-bred dogs, and the Chinese to a crowd of ants on a lump of sugar.
I'm understanding why Mexico wanted her out of their country. I'm sure, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Bly clearly made important contributions to journalism, and she was obviously a very important figure of her time. But she, like many other people that we have covered throughout history on this podcast, could be horribly problematic. So read her writing with that in mind. Like, yes, I'm so glad that she was able to change things at Bellevue Hospital. But, you know, let's just, like, read things with a grain of salt, or take things with a grain of salt, right? So her global trip eventually came to an end at precisely 3:51 p.m. on January 25th. That's when her train pulled into Jersey City. She had expected the journey to take 75 days, but she made it in 72 days, 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 41 seconds.
Boom. Suck it, 80 days.
Suck it. It was the fastest circumnavigation so far. And the World wrote, quote, the stagecoach days are ended. The new age of lightning travel has begun. And you can read all about her travels in her book, Around the World in 72 Days, published in 1890.
Not as catchy, I have to say.
It's not as catchy, but she did beat the record. So by 1895, so a couple of years after she got home, Bly married a millionaire named Robert Livingston Seaman.
Okay.
She retired from writing. She ended up helping her husband run his iron manufacturing and steel companies. But then her husband died in 1904. Finances were not looking good, and she had to return to journalism in 1911, and she ended up writing for the New York Evening Journal. She never reached stardom again, but continued to write until her death from pneumonia in 1922, when she was 57 years old.
It's young.
Very young. But she had an incredibly filled life.
That's true. That is true.
She did. And so that's Nellie Bly. And I just think her story is so interesting. She really did some of the craziest things.
Yeah, especially at that time. I think a woman traveling alone at that time, even now when I travel alone, people are like, Americans at least.
Right.
But, yeah, I can't imagine doing it.
Right. And I think the story of her going into Bellevue Hospital is so interesting too, and also just really scary.
Yeah, I feel like the first thing I would have done is come up with an exit plan. But that's why I'm not a, prize-winning journalist, so.
Right, yeah, no, I really could never. I like to think that I could, but I'm just being honest with myself. That is just that's not the road for me.
I'm not a good enough actor to stay in character that long.
No, oh my God, no. Yeah, so that's Nellie Bly. Very
Thank you
interesting.
for that.
Yeah.
Yes. My topic comes from the Tuesday New York Times puzzle by Matt Frederick, and it was 57 down, ventriloquist Lewis. The answer, Sherry Lewis.
Okay.
So we're both talking about women, although mine's a little bit of Sherry, a little bit of ventriloquism.
Okay.
Let's get into it. So
yes.
Ventriloquism is the art of altering your voice to make it appear like it's coming out of somewhere else or something else. We associate it today with entertainment, like the comedian Jeff Dunham, if you find him entertaining, or children's performer Sherry Lewis and her sock puppet Lamb Chop. But ventriloquism, yeah, that's who that is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But ventriloquism has not always been laughter and sock puppets. But before we get into that, let's pay homage to Sherry Lewis, because she was in The Clue. She has an interesting life. Okay. So this is all from, she has like a little bio on ventriloquistsociety.com, if anyone is interested.
Okay.
She was born as Phyllis Naomi Hurwitz on January 17th, 1933. And her dad was a professor, but more importantly, he was a magician, a very talented magician. In fact, Mayor LaGuardia, who is the same guy who took the sledgehammer to pinballs, as we know, even named him New York City's official magician.
Okay, that is a high honor coming from Mr. LaGuardia.
Mm-hmm, because he hates fun.
He hates fun.
And then Sherry's mother was a pianist, so her parents were like talented into performing, and they always encouraged Sherry to perform as well. Her father taught her magic, her mother taught her music and piano. She also learned acrobatics, juggling, ice skating, and baton twirling. They had this poor girl in like every extracurricular
Could you imagine?
activity.
I was fighting tooth and nail to not have to go to soccer practice. Like, god damn.
Yeah, well, could have been Sherry Lewis. So she attended New York's High School of Music and Art, and she studied piano and violin there. And, of course, with all these other hobbies, she studied ventriloquism under another ventriloquist, Hall of Fame member John W. Cooper.
Okay.
So Sherry went to Barnard College for 1 year, but she dropped out afterwards to enter show business. At this time, she also briefly got married to a man named Stan Lewis, and after the divorce, she kept the last name Lewis, and then that's how she got her stage name, Sherry Lewis.
Okay.
Which does have a better ring to it than Phyllis, just her original name. Okay. So in 1952, Lewis's puppetry won first prize on Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts television show, and this led to her very first kids show that she hosted called Facts in Fun, but it was just a local show in New York on Channel 4 in New York City. Then in 1954, she had another show called Cartoon Club with 2 Ks, which, again, I don't understand because both cartoon and club start with C, but they changed them to Ks. That show later became Sherry and Her Friends, and it was also a local New York show, but it was on Monday to Saturday, like it was on all week on Channel 11 in New York City. Then in March 1956, Sherry and the famous Lamb Chop appeared on national television, on the national television children's program Captain Kangaroo. That was like her big debut.
Lamb Chop! I loved Lamb Chop.
And she did so many shows. So Sherry and Friends became Sherryland, and then she had another series called Hi Mom, and both of these shows won New York area Emmy Awards. I didn't know that they had like local Emmy Awards.
Oh, did I ever tell you that I won a local Emmy?
You did?
In college, yeah.
Wow.
For a music video? I don't know.
Look at you.
It's really not as exciting as you think it is.
Well, you didn't leverage it like Sherry Lewis because in October 1960, she finally made it on national TV. It was called The Sherry Lewis Show. It was on NBC, and it replaced The Howdy Doody Show. Apparently, weren't very unique with the names of TV shows at the time. The Howdy Doody was another really popular children's show, so The Sherry Lewis Show became, took its place.
Okay.
She had a pretty big career. She did voiceovers for cartoons. She wrote a Star Trek episode. She got married. She had a daughter. In 1993, her and Lamb Chop lobbied in Congress in favor of protections for children's television. So Lamb Chop became the only ventriloquist puppet to ever testify in front of Congress.
Wow. Good
and you
for
know,
Lamb Chop.
Elmo is the only puppet, or at least the first, to testify in front of Congress. But Lamb Chop is the first ventriloquist one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
In 1996, Sherry released the video Lamb Chop's Special Hanukkah, and the program received the Parents' Choice Award. Sherry and her husband created the Charlie Horse Music Pizza, which was a children's show with a lot of music, and this is because at that time, a lot of schools were cutting music out of the curriculum, so they wanted to have a show with a lot of music to, you know, expose children to music, because obviously Sherry was also very passionate about music. That was what she mostly did in her earlier life. Sadly, in 1998, Sherry was diagnosed with cancer for the second time, and the prognosis was not good. She insisted on taping one final episode of the Charlie Horse Music Pizza Show, and then on August 2nd, 1998, she sadly passed away. She was survived by her husband, Jeremy, her daughter, Mallory, and her sister, Barbara. Prior to her death, Sherry sold all the rights of Lamb Chop to DreamWorks. However, her daughter, Mallory, still owns the live performing rights to the Lamb Chop character, and she continued to perform with Lamb Chop live.
Wow.
Some other interesting facts. Sherry conducted major symphonies in the US, Japan, and Canada. She wrote 60 children's books.
Hello.
She won a bunch of different awards. Like, her work is very highly acclaimed. Some awards were the Peabody Award.
Wow.
She won 12 Emmys. She won the 1995 American Academy of Children's Entertainment Award for Entertainer of the Year. And then in 1998, she was
posthumously
yes, awarded the Women in Film Lucy Award. So this award was presented in recognition of excellence and innovation in her creative works, which have enhanced the perception of women through the medium of television.
Wow. Damn, she was killing it.
Yeah, she was everywhere.
Wow.
So that's Sherry.
Okay,
Very
Sherry.
talented.
Snaps for Sherry.
But let's go back to just talking about ventriloquism as a whole. How does ventriloquism work?
You're going to have to tell me.
Well, according to Frontiers for Young Minds, an article called How Ventriloquism Works by Michael D.A. Graziano talks about it. So no one can really throw their voice. Like, you can't really make your voice come from a different direction other than yourself. But good ventriloquists are able to talk without moving their lips. But that's just good, like, breath and vocal control. Or if you're like me, it's just a talent that you were born with, because I can do that.
Yeah, I have seen you do that.
Yes, but that's not all that ventriloquism is. It's not just about being able to talk without moving your lips. The true art of ventriloquism, like what makes it entertaining as a performance, is that it combines two different illusions, and these are like proven scientific illusions that happen. So one of them is called visual capture. This is a quote from the article. If something nearby makes a sound, you can pretty much tell where the sound comes from. But if you see something else move at exactly the same time, you might get the impression that the sound actually comes from the moving object. If a bird chirps in a bush, and you see a door open at the same time, you might think that the chirp came from the door and that the hinges are rusty. The sound is captured by the visual movement. So neuroscientists have studied this, and even though they can't pinpoint like exactly how it works, they know that the part of your brain that interprets and like processes where a sound comes from does use visual signals as well.
Interesting.
But seeing something like lip sync to a sound like isn't that amazing. What makes good ventriloquism good is the addition of the social illusion. So basically, by giving the ventriloquist dummy their own personality, their own unique voice, and engaging in conversations and arguments, especially ones where the dummies seem to be running the show, causes spectators' brains to like develop an impression of consciousness of the dummy. Like, your mind is tricked to think that the dummy is really talking. It's like the combination of those two makes it seem really real. But I could also explain why some people are kind of freaked out by ventriloquist dummies, because they think that they are real.
Is it like the Uncanny Valley?
Yeah. Well, that brings me to my next article, actually, called on Atlas Obscura, called The Demonic Origins of Ventriloquism by Andy Wright.
Oh, please. Was this like, let me guess, is this something to do with like freaking people out with religion and stuff, where like,
Well,
occult
kind
stuff.
of. Actually, we kind of talk about oracles a little bit in here, which you did a topic on. So, ventriloquism dates back to ancient Greece. It's been around forever, they say. But back then, it was called engastromyths. So it's a mashup of en, which means in, gaster, the stomach, and mythos, which means word or speech. So basically, people believed that these ventriloquists at the time had demons in their stomach who belched words from their host's mouth.
Okay.
So engastromyths capitalized on this, and they kind of peddled their skills not only as entertainment, but also as divination.
Ooh.
So the roots of like what made ventriloquism popular is actually like necromancy, which is allowing like dead people or spirits to enter into a living person's body and then talk to the living. In 150 AD, a man called Alexander of Abonotychus captivated his peers when he showed up with Glykon, a talking snake who had a human head. So this was like kind of a talking dummy. But basically, Alexander actually was able to establish a cult around this snake. People were worshipping this so-called talking snake, and Alexander told people that Glykon was a reincarnation of the god Apollo.
Oh.
Glykon would give people oracles and advice for a price. He made a lot of money off of this snake.
I'm sure he did.
This cult was so they like think that this cult was really powerful because they've actually found coins, like ancient coins with Glykon on them. So
wow,
had a lot of followers. There's also some evidence that the cult survived even after Alexander's death.
Wow.
And most of the information we have about Glykon comes from the Greek writer Lucian, who was extremely skeptical of the whole situation. So Lucian claimed that the head was just made from linen, and it was mounted on a snake's body, and it was made to speak through a tube operated by a concealed assistant. So it was all rigged. So this isn't necessarily like traditional ventriloquism where Alexander was like holding the snake and making it talk, but it was kind of like the early use of a dummy to focus the audience attention on like a magical voice coming out of this inanimate object.
The precursor.
So fast forward a couple centuries, people were way more freaked out about anything that had to do with like witchcraft or possession. People got really boring. And during the Reformation, there was a nun named Elizabeth Barton in Kent, the Nun of Kent, who became well known for her ventriloquial prophecies.
Ooh.
So they think she most likely had some form of epilepsy because she would like become really sick and she would have seizures. But she would also speak prophecies without moving her lips, like without using her mouth. And it would be like a nice voice for good prophecies and then like a demonic voice for like anything evil.
Damn.
But she was a nun, like, and she had a lot of followers and supporters, and she was able to stay a nun. Like the Catholic Church allowed her, and they, held her up as being legit for a while.
Wow.
But then she started becoming obsessed with the fact that King Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife and marry Anne Boleyn.
Not good. Not good, folks.
No, she went on, I feel like it was a couple years. She kept telling the king and everyone around her that if he married Anne Boleyn, he would die an hour after the marriage and he would go to hell. And she just like kept going on and on about it. And she was like getting everyone riled up. It became such a big disruption that the king ended up having her hanged for this.
Yeah. I mean, in retrospect, we all know that King Henry was not the nicest chap.
Yeah.
So.
But she truly believed that. But then by the 1800s, ventriloquism became less taboo and like associated with the dark arts and possession, and it just kind of became a form of like slightly dark entertainment. Ventriloquists would often perform alongside magicians. The great Leicester, he was the first famous ventriloquist. He would like travel all around the world. He always had a huge audience that came to see his shows. And the reason why he was so popular was because he pushed the envelope further than any other performers at the time. So he would do stuff like drink a glass of water and have the dummy talk at the same time, which I don't know how to do that.
Oh, wow.
In the 1900s, it was like the vaudeville ventriloquism that like I kind of think of when I think of more like traditional ventriloquists. So the dummies went from sitting on like tables or props to sitting on the ventriloquist's knees, and they have a movable mouth and to like give off the impression that they're actually talking. And because they often performed in theaters, the dummies would wear really, really heavy stage makeup so that everyone could see their face. So that's like the dummy, you know, with like kind of like the Saw dummy with like the black lines and the really red cheeks.
Okay.
That comes from this era. But since this changed, the relationship between ventriloquists and their dolls became all the more intimate.
Okay.
Expert ventriloquists were known to have such close ties with their dummies that they even incorporated them into their everyday lives, like outside of performance.
Oh, no.
So, yes, a good example of this is Eddie Bergen. He was a huge international success with his dummy, Charlie McCarthy. But even offstage, they were inseparable. Eddie referred to Charlie as his son from time to time. And after he died, he left his $10,000 inheritance not to his real human daughter, Candace, but to his dummy, Charlie McCarthy. His will said, quote, "I make this provision for sentimental reasons, which to me are vital due to the association with Charlie McCarthy, who has been my constant companion and who has taken on the character of a real person and from whom I have never been separated, even for a day."
I'm sorry, no.
Yeah, so Candace actually she wrote a memoir called A Fine Romance, which I may read now just because it's so interesting. She basically says that she had to like fight for attention from this dummy. But she does clarify the money was given to Charlie so that the funds could be managed, invested, and reinvested to provide for his future performances.
Okay.
So I'm going to end there. That's like a major, I mean, I'm sure Candace is in therapy, but like.
Yeah, that's major, all right. That's one way to put it. Holy heck. I mean, we all have our things. You know, we all become attached to our things, right?
We do. Yeah.
But like, I don't know. If you're starting to leave money to like your inanimate objects, then I think you might need to start talking to somebody.
Well, I mean, he does the voice for it, so does it really? I guess I talk to myself when I'm alone. I don't know,
but are you gonna leave money to your bed, your stuffed animal, your I don't know, your television? Like, come on.
I'm actually leaving money to my Alexa.
Oh yeah, your Echo. She needs it.
Don't say her name. She's listening.
She is. She actually is listening. Well, that's interesting. I cannot throw my voice. I have a very vivid memory of watching Scooby-Doo where there was a ventriloquist in like a museum, and they hid in like a sarcophagus and then threw their voice, and Shaggy and Scooby got all confused.
Yeah, I think movies have depicted it as if you can throw your voice as if it's coming from like across the room without having anything moving, like to
that
visually
illusion.
depict. Yeah, like in the movie When a Stranger Calls, the original. If anyone has seen this from like the 80s, I love that movie. Let me know. But yes, it also has to do with a ventriloquist who can somehow throw his voice to make it seem like he's on the other side of a door. But that's neither here nor there. That's my topic on ventriloquism.
Thank you for that. And now I need to go read more about Lamb Chop because I feel like I just need my memory jogged.
Yeah, you'll see a picture of him. And if listeners want to see a picture of him, we will post it on our Instagram photo roundup later this week. You can follow us there at The Good Evening Girls.
Or you can follow us on Twitter and participate in one of our very exciting polls. I'm excited to see what Grace comes up with this week. You'll have to stay tuned. The account is The Good Eve Girls. That's Twitter. Come over and vote in our polls. Have fun.
And then TikTok is, what are we on TikTok?
For everything else. Oh,
usually say that.
We're the Good Eve Girls on TikTok. And everything but, you know, we got our photos on Insta. We got our polls on Twitter. And all the miscellaneous is on TikTok. So come on over.
We like to keep people guessing, scattered.
Yes.
We can't put all our eggs in one basket.
We can't. And we don't have all the answers, okay? We like to go with the flow, whatever calls to us at whatever time. We just need to be available.
We have nothing. But on that note, I guess this is goodbye and see you later.
Arrivederci. Maybe Grace and I will circumnavigate the globe together. We'll let you know.
in 71 days.
Ooh, take that, Nelly. Take
We
that.
said it here first.
All right, folks. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.